Hey guys, welcome to Webflow Tips and Tricks, and let's get started by adding first element to our canvas. That would be section, and this section is by default spread across entire width of the document. This is how block element works in HTML. However, I'd like to spread it across the entire height of the document as well. It means that I need to adjust the height. However, I always think when I go to this style pane, I always think of the classes first, of the selector. If I don't have selector or I don't want to destroy any selectors that I have, I always first use the most important keyboard shortcut, which is Command Return. If you press Command Return or Control Enter on PC, that's the same. You're basically going to create a new class here, and let's give it a name blue. And now I can tweak things without destroying anything in my previous classes. So let's go to size, and in height, let's put 100 VH, and VH is basically viewport height. If you put 100 VH, you're going to have this element spread across entire document, not only horizontally, but vertically as well. Let's change the color and let's add another element inside of this section. So for example, let's use a rich text element. And what if I want to center this element in the browser? Well, obviously we're going to use flexbox, right? But this flexbox property needs to be applied not to the rich text block element that's selected right now, but to the blue section containing this element. And it's oftentimes that I add elements like this inside my sections or inside containers, and I want to quickly move back to the container in order to set up the layout. So what I do, instead of clicking in Navigator, I simply press Option on Mac and then up arrow to select the parent element. Now the blue container is selected, and I can go ahead in layout and apply display flex and align it to center as well as justify it to middle. Now what I like to do is select this rich text element, and again I can use Option and then down arrow. Now the rich text element is selected. I want this rich text element to take 80% of the wider browser edge. And what I mean by this is I need to change the width of this element and put 80 here. However, I don't want it to be 80% because then it would be 80% of the container, of the blue container. Also, I don't want to do VW, which is viewport width, and kind of closer because it doesn't take into consideration the height of the browser. What I can do instead, and you won't really find it in here, so we have viewport width, but we don't have something that I want to use, is viewport min or viewport max. So for example, if I say viewport max, well, this unit is based on the larger dimension of the viewport. If the viewport height is larger than the width, then the value of, for example, 80 here will be 80% of viewport height. Similarly, if the viewport width is larger than the height, the value of 80 will be equal to 80% of the viewport width. So I'm going to use VMAX here. Okay, now I have what I wanted, but I forgot to create the class first with Command Return, and Webflow now gave it a name of rich text block, which I want to change. Just click on this name and change it to, let's say, cool. And by the way, using your mouse in Webflow is not as much efficient as working with keyboard. So if you'd like to do it with keyboard shortcuts, you can press Command Return and then you can press Delete and create new class, then apply some properties as well. Okay, now let's change the font for this rich text element, and I want to select my favorite font. However, unfortunately, it's not on the list. So let's escape from here. Let's select the body of the document, and there you go. Here is the God mode for Webflow. If you press iddqd, which I think you know from playing Doom, you can go back to typography now, but let's select this one and let's go back to typography, and here it is. Let's select our favorite font, and this will let you charge even more for your Webflow project. Well done. Actually, there are some fixed rules to apply in order to charge more money for your projects. The first rule is make the logo bigger. The second one is change typography to Comic Sans. And the third one is obviously make the text blink. So what if you've searched entire internet for this blinking text script, and now you have it and it's all CSS based and you need to add it to your website? Well, there are at least a couple of ways in which you can accomplish that. For example, if you go to your homepage settings and then scroll all the way down to custom code section, you can put your script inside the head tag of this homepage, and then it will be executed. The same thing applies to your project settings. If you want to put the script to the entire page, you'll use a custom code tab here. However, there is a huge disadvantage of this way of working because you won't see the effect in the designer. You'd have to publish your page and then the text would be ready to blink. However, there's a cool way in which you can preview the changes to CSS code inside of Webflow, and it's as easy as adding another element to the body of your document, and this is the embed component. So let's click on the embed component. This will let you inject some code into your page, and as long as this is only CSS code, and here I'm styling this cool rich text element and make it blink, you are safe to close this, and immediately your changes will be visible in the designer. Well, that's really great, but maybe let's get rid of this HTML embed for now. And for the blue background, let's make it even a bit darker. And let's go back to our rich text element and change its color. So I can change the font color from here, and I can change it to some white, lighter color. And I need it to be almost white, maybe gray. However, I need to be WCAG compliant as well. And here you have the contrast ratio tests. Now we failed it, but if I start changing the color towards white, you'll see that at some point I'll pass the test. And for example, here I'm almost white and I have passed this AA test. I could probably even improve it by, let's say, making the font bigger. And this is pretty cool that inside of Webflow you have this contrast ratio checker. It's available for all your text fields, and it's really, really useful and will help you make your website more accessible. All right, onward to the next tip. So you probably know that for rich text field, you have those classes that can be separate from the basic HTML classes in your document. For example, if you select paragraph, now you cannot really create a new class here, but you can select all paragraphs, and now you can click on this little plus icon to nest selector inside of Cool. It means that now those paragraphs will be styled this way only if they are nested inside of this Cool class. However, what you might not know is that this Cool class doesn't have to really be applied to rich text element only. What I mean by this is if I change any settings, for example, I make the font bigger and it's getting even prettier now. If you change the line height, for example, now you can use the same nested structure for all of these similar structures on your page. So for example, if you go back to blue and then add a div block here, and inside this div block, I'm going to nest paragraph. So I have the same structure like this rich text element, then paragraph, I have the same div block and then paragraph. So if for div block, now I apply the same class, Cool, you'll see that the paragraph also inherits all the values. So this will let you sometimes really not use so many combo classes, but create different structures within your document and then reapply them as you did for the rich text element. That's pretty cool as well. And if we go back to this rich text element also, now if we go to paragraph, there's also a side tip for whatever classes you have here. You have the count of the classes on the page. So we have 3 classes like this working on the page. And if you want to preview them, this actually is clickable. You can click on that and this will highlight all of the classes, all of the elements that have this class applied. So this is pretty cool. If you want to add something to your rich text element, so for example, you're using editor or in CMS or inside of the designer like this, you can click on the plus icon and then use the little embed code element. And this is really cool because you don't really necessarily have to embed music or Google Maps here, but you can embed literally anything that you have on Embedly list. So Embedly is the tool that Webflow uses here, and there are many different tools that you can embed from. So there's a huge list, and you can, for example, embed something like favorite TED Talk. It's as easy as copying the link of this TED Talk and then pasting it here. I'm gonna click OK, and here we have it. Can you outsmart a troll by thinking like one? Great. In many cases, this is so much easier than using the embed code or the video element, the background video element, or a video lightbox. You can simply use this rich text box in order only to embed something from other places. And this is really, really cool. Great. Now let's say we want to duplicate this entire blue section. What you can do is Command C and Command V to copy and paste it. But another way, which I use sometimes, is press and hold Option and then click and drag with your left mouse button, and here you have the copy of the element that you've selected. Let's go ahead and select this second element. Let's give it a combo class, let's say 2, and change the background color so that we can easily distinguish those sections. And let's go to body right now. And what if you want to create a button that will scroll to this second section? Well, you can press A and then add and search for the button, but the easy way is pressing Command E, and this is a really great shortcut in Webflow. If you don't know it, Command E will let you search literally anything within your project. So if you want to add a button, you can use the first letters. Those are a bit unfortunate. However, if you press return, you now have the button. Let's put this button to the top. And the common way to scroll to some element is just selecting this section to get to its settings. This is D on the keyboard, by the way. So let's say we want to add an ID of section. And if you've added the ID now for the button, you can scroll to this section, to this ID in particular. So now if you press Command Shift P, which is a great shortcut for preview, another one that I really recommend you to remember, you can click on the button and it goes straight to the second section. What if we want to change the behavior of the scrolling behavior? What if we want to really slow down this scrolling? There is an attribute that you can use for this target section. So let's switch to blue, and in its settings, I'm going to add custom attribute. Let's click on plus, and the name of this attribute is data scroll time. And this will let you slow it down if you enter any value above 1. So if you go with 0, this will go immediately to this section. Then if you go, for example, like 0.5 or 0.75, this will be slightly faster than the default, which is 1. But if you go above 1, so for example, let's use 20 here and save it. Now in the preview, if I click on this button, I'm going to wait a little bit and it now starts scrolling. It's super slow. By the way, if you go back from the preview mode right now, in the designer, it's scrolling as well. So that's Webflow on autopilot. Okay, let's quickly scroll to the bottom, and there's one more attribute that you can use on top. So let's add another one. This is data scroll without time, and you can put different values here. For example, if you use mid, that will make this blue section not to go all the way up, but just to the middle of the screen. So this is another cool tip that you can use. All right, next up. There are 2 cool extensions that you can install to Chrome, and from Web Store you can first search for the one that will search Google Fonts in Webflow, and this basically will let's go to project settings, and from here let's go to fonts. So by default you have this really difficult to search and scroll list of Google fonts, but if you go ahead and add this extension to Chrome, and then when you'll be back and refresh this page, let me do it, and now go to fonts. Now you can easily type the name of Google Fonts so that you can search for them here. It's super cool and easy. The second extension that I'd like to show you is Webflow Chrome extension. This will give you pretty cool color picker, so an eyedropper that you can use for whatever color field that you have. You can click on this little eyedropper icon, and then you can select any of the colors that you have on in Designer. Okay, let's duplicate this section once more with Option Drag. Let's select the new one, Command Return, delete the combo class, and create the combo class free so that we can easily change the color to some green color from there. Okay, now what I'd like to do is delete the rich text element from here, but inside in this blue section, let me search for a container. Now I'm going to search for a div block. Inside this div block, we're going to use image, and inside also we're going to put a paragraph. Okay. Now for the entire container, I'd like to set the display to be flex. Command return to give this div block a name of card. So I can use our favorite combo class cool so that the text is formatted as we love it. And now let's copy and paste 2 times so that we have 3 cards. Now let's apply some margin to all of the edges, and you can click on the value and then apply it or just type it from your keyboard. Also, if you escape from there, you can click and hold, and then you can scroll your mouse to the left or to the right to change this value like so. If you press and hold Option, you're gonna do it for both left and right margin. You can do the same for for top and bottom. Or if you want to adjust all of the size, you simply press and hold Shift instead of Option. And now you can add it to all of the sides of our cards. And by the way, if you later on decide that you don't want to use this margin bottom, it's as easy as Option clicking on its value, and now it's been resetted. You can reset all the values that you have in blue with Option click in the style pane. Now, a side tip would be previewing all the margins here. And if you want to do it, you can use this X-ray mode in Webflow. I usually do it, and then I can hover over the elements that I want to preview the margins for, or I hover over them in the navigator pane. This is really cool. So let's go out this X-ray mode. And what I'd like to do now is truncate a bit of text in here. There's a lot of text, and especially when it comes from CMS, you might use something that's called line clamp. I'm going to show you that in a second. Sometimes you just can make text a little bit more readable. And by the way, a side tip, if you want to select something that's nested inside of this card, so any child element, it's as easy as pressing and holding Command on Mac and Control on PC and clicking on this very element. Now I've selected the paragraph. And if you want to change how it displays, you can go to typography, and here you have columns. So sometimes it's as easy as applying 2 columns. Not everyone knows that. You can have 2 columns for the text here, and it's especially useful to apply it to responsive breakpoints. So for example, you can have desktop and tablet version with 2 columns, and then on mobile, you can switch back to 1 column. Anyway, line clamp is about truncating some of this text in the paragraph. All you need to do is use HTML embed. So let's search for embed once again, and a little bit of code that I have from CSS Tricks. So let's paste this code and let's create and apply it to a class. So we want to target card and any paragraph inside of card. Now this line clamp property will let you trim it to, let's say, 4 lines or 2 lines or 3 lines. And let's save and close. There you have it. I have a question for you now. So how many times have you added a div block and then created a structure inside this div block, only to realize 2 minutes later that it should have been a link block from the beginning? I've done it so many times, and I had to delete the div block, then create a link block and recreate the structure. Well, now you can select the div block and right click on it on the canvas within the designer and simply click on convert to link block. It's as easy, and now you have this little link block working. So no more holy shits, at least for this one. Now let's talk about images. If you want to add some dummy images, sometimes I just go straight to a CMS collection. I just create a new CMS collection. So let's give it a name, test. And now the most important thing is to add an image field here. That would be image, and then save field. And now if you create collection, Webflow will let you generate some sample items. So let's say you want to generate 10 items, and then you automatically generate 10 images that you can use. So now let's go to collection that we can add to our body of our document. Let's go ahead and paste it here. And we're going to use collection source, this tests. And now for like inside, we're going to add an image. And for this image, we're going to get images from the image field. As you can see, you can easily load different images, and Webflow will automatically collect and fetch some images for you. So you can use them as dummy images. Let's now undo it. And sometimes I use this way. Sometimes I just use some dummy images and load them straight into Webflow. And by the way, if you double click on an image, you have this alt text here. So it says you can use alt text from the assets, or you can have custom description, or even create something that's decorative. There is no semantic meaning to this image, and you don't have to set the alt text for this guy. But if you use alt text from assets, and then you go to assets, you can now go to settings of this image, and here is the alt text that you can put. So this is pretty convenient because you can do it all at once for all the images that you're using. That being said, oftentimes in the projects you have much more images in the assets panel actually used. So I'm going to show you a simple trick. If you publish your website, and by the way, there is a shortcut Shift P to go to this publish dialog menu, but if you want to publish instead, just press Shift Return. This is a lifesaver. So you're publishing a website right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the images and delete them. Well, before you do it, you can press Command Shift S, and that would give you a backup. So you can anytime you can press Command Shift S and save a backup of the current website. So all the images will be there, and now you're safe to delete them, because if you delete those images, they will stay in the designer. And now if you press Shift Return, so you republish the site and it's publishing. Let's press Shift Return once again. If you republish the site and then refresh the designer, so let's press Command R and go back to the assets, you'll see that the images are here again, but only those images that you actually use in your project. And now you can go to their settings and add those alt text or decide that this is just a decorative image. Let's scroll back down to the images in the fourth section right there. Now let's double click on this guy. And as you probably know, images in Webflow are responsive by default, and in 98% of the cases, it works beautifully, but sometimes you want to turn it off. In order to do so, press Command Shift O, and then you'll get this extra item in the menu. You can turn off responsive image. Also, there's a new loading option, and Webflow automatically lazy loads your images. This is brilliant because it means that the images is being loaded when it's scrolled into view, and this tremendously speeds up your website. However, that's a new feature. So in order to make your previously published websites work faster, you have to open them and in the designer change this for images individually. Also, it's good that you know it's here, because if you want to go back to the old days, you can select this second option. And for the performance improvements as well, you might want to take a look at your links and buttons. If you press D to go to the settings, now for the external links as well as links within your page, you can select this preload method, and you have prefetch and pre-render here. What they do is, once your page is loaded, they will automatically go and prefetch and pre-render those websites that you have links to, and user don't even have to click them. So once user clicks them, they will be available momentarily. And for very important CTA actions, you'll use prefetch, because this will download the entire content. And for less important, you might use pre-render or nothing at all and just leave it to default. So this is pretty crucial as well. Can you make Webflow work even faster? Yes. This is thanks to SystemFlow, a designer-first framework that we've developed with my friend Matt, initially for our own needs and to make us happier and to make the delivery of our projects for clients faster. But this is really game-changing for us, and I hope that you can also benefit from SystemFlow as much as we do. I don't want to explain it in detail, but I want to show you 3 simple tricks. The first one being the ready-made components that you can use from SystemFlow. So for example, if you search for a navbar, you can select whatever navbar fits you and just click on the name of the navbar. Then you go to Webflow, press Command E, Command V, return, and here you have working component. The same happens if you work with SystemFlow for Figma, which is completely mapped framework for your design tool. You have the same names as our components for different sections. Even if you pre-style them, you can double click on the name and copy, Command E, Command V, return, and there you have another component. Styling these components is super easy, especially as the framework has a customized page that will let you change the fonts, the typography, the text and colors globally to the entire framework. So you basically map what you have in your design. And for example, if you want to change this primary color, you can do so, and you can edit the swatch and then change it to whatever color you have in the design, save it, and you can see that it changes across entire framework. And one last tip that I have from SystemFlow are design tokens. So if you go to this design page, you have design tokens for typography, color, for spacing and layout. So those are basically hundreds of classes that you can use to apply some padding with a specific value or maybe color. So if I go back to our home page and try to use these classes, and by the way, you'll notice that the homepage is now changed, so colors are a bit different. Say I want to change the color of some part of the text as well, so let's select it now, and I'm going to wrap it into a span. And now let's press Command Return and use one of the ready-made classes. So that's color for the text, and I'm going to use primary 60 color, which is the pink that we've changed. So here it is, as easy as that. Let's say I want to select the heading. You can see that we have this heading XL class, and I want to change it to some smaller heading. It's as easy as going from XL to L, and there it is, smaller, but the margins and paddings adjust accordingly. For example, if I want to select the tagline and add some extra margin between the tagline and the header, let's go ahead and create an extra class. I'm going to use spacing, margin, and I want to use margin bottom and add 24 extra pixels to the bottom of this tagline. So that's it. It's as easy as it looks. And if you want to check out SystemFlow, go ahead and navigate to systemflow.co. But I also shown you these tricks because I feel that they really help in my work. So even if you don't want to explore SystemFlow, you can implement the same rules and the same tips that I've shown you into your own workflow and maybe create your own framework. Hope you had fun watching those tips. There's more coming, so please let me know what you think and also subscribe to the news. I'll see you in the next videos.